Okay, I think I'm ready to get this started. So far nothing has crashed yet. This is a good thing. Let's not tempt fate though. Let's see. That's turned off, that's turned off, that's turned off, that's turned on. The stream appears to be live. And I think we're ready to go. Let me get my chat here. Nothing in it yet, but may need it later on. Okay. Are we good? I think we're good. Then let's get started. Hello! Shadowcat back! Not with Warhammer 40k this time. Gotta get used to that one. Gonna have fun getting used to that one though. It's gonna be good. We're gonna be having a lot of fun here. Hello and welcome back to the Sunday Tabletop stream. So, just in case you're new here, because we may get some new people in on this one. I'm not sure yet. We'll have to wait and see. But if you're new here, this is my Sunday stream. And what we do on Sundays is we make conversion modules for tabletop games. My preferred games are Pathfinder and Starfinder, first edition. Starfinder second edition isn't even out yet. Although I believe I heard it's coming soon, I think. Anyway, I'm not up there yet. So I still do everything in Pathfinder and Starfinder first edition. But we take other games and we write the rules to turn them into a module that you can play on your tabletop. Specifically, we look at games that you can't necessarily play in Pathfinder or Starfinder. So, for example, so far since we've started doing this, we have done a Star Trek module that we are currently playing through in my Discord. So, if you'd like to be a part of that, there's a link to the Discord down below. But we did a Star Trek module. We did a Wheel of Time module, we did a Final Fantasy module, and we just finished Warhammer 40k. Now, we're moving into Magic the Gathering. And it's going to be an interesting one. So, taking things like, taking Magic the Gathering is going to be a challenge because there's not a lot to really work from in Magic the Gathering. There is cards, and that's about it. When it came to other games, like, when we did Warhammer 40k, there's a massive wiki of information that tells you everything you could ever want to know about the people, the places, and the things inside of the Warhammer 40k universe. Magic the Gathering doesn't really have that, so we're going to have to make a lot of different interpretations, and we're going to have to get really creative when it comes to writing the rules for this. But the overall goal for this module is going to be to make it so that you can pick up any single magic card, and you should be able to insert that magic card directly into the game. So if you happen to be a Magic the Gathering player and you would like to build a character off of your current deck, the goal here is to be able to do that. You should be able to literally take your deck of cards and just pick out the cards that you want to use for your character. Now, how we're going to do that, we're going to get to a bit later. Today, however, we just need to make a listing of everything that we need to do. And so we're not going to get too into the weeds on today's episode, but we're going to get a lot done regardless. Before I do that, however, and I finally get to actually test this thing out on stream, I look at the chat, I see that Blizz is in the chat, and so I can finally do this now. Hello, Blizz. It's good to see you. That worked so well. I'm so proud of myself. Okay. pumped. I'm pumped. I'm ready to go. So, let's get ready to go then. We're going to need a couple of things. We are going to need our browser. Let me make sure I've got that set up. I do have that set up. I got to use a whole bunch of new web pages that I've never used before. So, browser. Got it. And we need a brand new spreadsheet, which also we got it. So this is all good. Now, right now, it is a completely blank spreadsheet. I know it's not that fascinating to look at. However, we can, before we get started, take a look at what we've done. So right now, we are on Magic the Gathering. We're going to get this one done. As I said before, we've already got these done. We still have more ahead of us. We have more ahead of us. And if you would like to suggest any future modules to go through, I have a lot of spreadsheet here. We can always add more to it. So if there's any game that you particularly enjoy playing that you think could be better turned into a role-playing game, throw it in the chat. Let me know. Put it in the comments down below. You can't do that while the stream is live, but, you know, after the stream you can do that. Just throw whatever you want in there, and we'll get to it eventually. I cannot imagine any of them can possibly take longer than Warhammer 40k did. Okay then, so let's get started. So the first things we got to do is we have to look at Pathfinder, because Pathfinder and Magic the Gathering are not going to be entirely they're not going to be entirely compatible at first. And the reason for that is simple. In Magic the Gathering, you take on the role of what's called a Planeswalker, and perhaps we should start there, actually. So I wonder where I would find that. What are we looking for? Let's go for story. Alright, so the multiverse of Magic the Gathering is a shifting space of unique, disconnected worlds called planes. The blind eternities between those worlds are unknown and impenetrable to the artifice of most cultures, but can be freely traveled by the rare individuals who are called planeswalkers, who possess an intrinsic spark that frees them from ordinary limits. The stories of the multiverse span millennia and numerous planes. Now, one of the interesting things about this is that because Hasbro, who controls this, actually, technically I think it's Wizards of the Coast that controls it, but Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast, they play rather fast and loose with the lore and setting of Magic the Gathering. Because of that, and because they keep putting out new sets for like TV shows, cartoons, comic books, there's even a Dungeons and Dragons Magic the Gathering set. Which means that, yes, technically speaking, by the time we get done with this, you should be able to summon a Dungeons and Dragons character through a Magic the Gathering card into Pathfinder. And if that is not enough to turn your head into a pretzel, I don't know what is. But the point here is that because Wizards of the Coast kind of plays fast and loose with their whole lore and universe thing, it means that the multiverse literally includes every universe that you can consider. Which means that when it connects to the Dungeons and Dragons card set, that is technically canon. And there's like a Doctor Who set, and there's a Walking Dead set, and all kinds of stuff. And every single one of those is technically canon. But the canon is very, very soft. It's hard to really get any further than that. All I can say is that they are actually connected. It's one of those things where nobody has really thought it through. No one has really given it any serious long-term thought. They're not likely to either. And so we're just kind of stuck where we are. Now, for our purposes, I'm not necessarily going to be including all of it. I mean, even when it comes to tournament play and structured play in Magic the Gathering, there are some cards and some sets that are just straight up banned. So when it comes to actually playing the game, there are... I mean, as much as I hate to say it, a lot of the cards are probably going to be subject to the GM's approval. And so, yeah. That's going to be kind of a thing. And it has to be kind of that way because if you're trying to sit down and do a more grounded story, the one thing that you don't want is for, well, let's say I'm a huge fan of Transformers. You don't want somebody to summon Megatron into your fantasy setting. You just don't want that. So some of the cards are going to have to be subject to a GM approval. By and large, I don't see that affecting most people and most players, but there's always that one player. Okay? Don't be that player. Okay, anyway, so the earliest stories often center on the plane of Dominaria, which is more or less what we would call our world. Kinda, sorta. It's the most Earth-like. There are other planes that are definitely less Earth-like. They tell the evolution of the Phyrexians from the ancient Thrawn, but we're not going to go too deep into history here. There is a lot of history to this. While the lore in Magic the Gathering is kinda light, there are actually a lot of books for Magic the Gathering that tell a lot of different stories. And often these books do tend to come in series. Not long series, but they'll tell a longer story. Think of it kind of like The Lord of the Rings, just not on that level. I mean, come on, Tolkien's the best. How do you get better than Tolkien? But anyway, there's a list of planeswalkers here. These are a lot of the most common. Jace Berylin, Chandra Nalaar, Gideon Jura, you can read them for yourself. By and large, these are all very, very famous planeswalkers, and if you're playing a planeswalker, you may have actually heard of some of these people. If you are not a planeswalker, the odds are good that you probably haven't heard of any of them, unless they're really significant. For example, Nicol Bolas. If you happen to live in the same plane as Nicol Bolas, you know who he is. I mean, he basically rules the entire plane. Now, Innistrad, I don't know too much about Innistrad at all, like what even it is. The multiverse. So there's planes of the multiverse. You can see them here, but this is definitely not all of them. This is not exhaustive because the multiverse is infinite. And so, yeah, technically the list never ends. Again, as I stated, the lore and the setting is rather fast and loose, so technically speaking, Faerun, which is from Dungeons & Dragons, is a plane. Now, it gets a little bit complicated when you think about, like, Dungeons & Dragons, because Dungeons & Dragons also has multiple planes. You have the material plane, where like 99.9% of all stories take place. And then, of course, you have your aligned planes, you have your elemental planes, you have your energy planes. All of them form the planar stack in Dungeons & Dragons. And technically, that entire universe that Dungeons & Dragons takes place in is a plane in the multiverse. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of... It's going to get kind of weird. I'm not going to lie. It's going to get kind of weird. Also, here's all the story arcs that they have currently, but we're not going to go into those because it's not really going to matter too much to what we're doing here. Again, we just need to write down the rules, and if we wanted to actually play through any one of these story arcs, that's a thing that we could do. So let's go ahead and take a look at Planeswalkers while we have the opportunity here. Alright, so in Magic the Gathering, Planeswalkers are among the most powerful beings in the multiverse. Within the game, they represent themselves, or their identities, as the players. The idea of them having loyalty counters further enhances the idea a Planeswalker is a card type within the game. Now, card types and all that kind of stuff we will get into later. I mean, that's going to be probably the bulk of what this module is going to be about, but we're not there yet, obviously. The point is, though, that you yourself, as a character, are going to be a Planeswalker, and the first thing that we have to really look at and identify is Planeswalker as a class. So we have to go look at Pathfinder. So Pathfinder classes. And that is super tiny. Let's go ahead and format this sheet. First off, let's make everything at least 12 point. Maybe even a little bit bigger. 14? 14 looks better. Let's bold the whole sheet just so it's easier for me to read. And then we're going to format all of this as text. That way, when I start putting numbers and things in, it's not going to get all weird on me. Alright, so here's the first problem that we're going to have. Now, when it came to things like Warhammer 40k, the first thing that we did is we banned all the magic classes. Like, if your class uses magic, it's out. That is gonna be tricky in Magic the Gathering. And the reason why it's gonna be tricky is because, technically speaking, all of the classes that are in Pathfinder exist. So when we look at this, we look at classes. The first thing we have, of course, are the core classes. These are the traditional ones that if you've ever played a tabletop game before, you're familiar with. Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Wizard. Okay? We all know these. And if you play 5e, also Warlock. Warlock for Pathfinder First Edition is a little bit further down. Pathfinder has its own base classes: Alchemist, Cavalier, Gunslinger, Inquisitor, Magus, Dura, Oracle, Shifter, Summoner, my favorite, Witch, Vampire, Hunter, and Vigilante. The Witch and the Warlock are essentially the same thing. Then they have their hybrid classes. Unchained classes are like, yeah, you're probably just not going to get approval for that one. There's the occult classes, which deal in different kind of things. Alternate classes, which are kind of dumb sometimes. Anti-paladins are just paladins that have lost their oath. Although I don't play with anti-paladins, I just play evil paladins. I don't see why a paladin can't be evil if the god you're worshipping is evil. Ninjas are just rogues, samurais are just cavaliers. And then we have NPC classes. Now, my original thought was that if everyone is playing a Planeswalker, the only classes that we really need are going to be these NPC classes. The problem with that is that when it comes to creatures, well, we have a list of creature types. So, history, I don't care. The race, class, model. Yeah, this is essentially what we're looking for. So when it comes to races, there's a list here. And you can see them here. There's aliens, angels, atogs, frogs, necrons, because there actually are Warhammer 40k cards in Magic the Gathering. I think. Pretty sure. I mean, it's a necron. Yeah, for Warhammer 40k Commander deck. So technically, if you were here from the Warhammer 40k module, and you wanted to play Warhammer 40k in the Magic the Gathering universe, that's how you would do it. Again, subject to GM approval. I don't know that I would allow that depending on the game happening. But these are all of the creature types, and unfortunately we're probably going to have to go through them. Because I don't yet know exactly how this is going to work, but we may have to go through those. Anyway, then there's the class system, so creature classes. And when we look at the creature classes, we have advisors, allies, archers. Specialize in fighting with bows and arrows. Sound familiar? It's either going to be a fighter with a bow or a ranger with a bow. But here we go. We have barbarians. We have bards. What else do we have? Clerics. Okay. Do we literally have all of them here? Barbarian, bard, cleric, druid? Can I get a druid? We have a druid. Fighters. Almost positive there's a fighter in here somewhere. There is not a fighter. Okay, well, no fighter then. Monk? I know there's monks. Yep, there's monk. Paladin ranger. Well, there's ninja. Paladins? Do we have paladins? Peasant performer. No paladin. Ranger, though? Yep, we got rangers. And then rogue, sorcerer, and wizard. Rogue, right there. Sorcerer. Do we have sorcerer? There is no sorcerer. However, there is a warlock, there is a warrior, and there is a wizard. So while there's no fighter, there are technically those. Because these exist, I have to assume that if you wanted to play as one of them, you should technically be allowed to. Now, we may have to make some lore adjustments, because in, say, Dungeons & Dragons, all magic comes from what is called the weave. Well, that's a little bit different from how it works in Magic the Gathering. But not too difficult. It's kind of like the same system, but two different names. In Dungeons & Dragons, they draw magic from the weave and shape that into spells. In Magic the Gathering, they draw energy from ley lines and form that into spells. So, yeah, like I said, same basic system, just different ways of doing it. And we're going to get into the actual magic system later. But first, I see that PC Unicorn is in the chat. Hello, PC Unicorn, and because you're here, I get to do this. And hello. I love that so much. I'm having too much fun with it. Okay. Anyway, though, because of that, I don't necessarily think that I want to ban any of the Pathfinder classes. Technically speaking, if you can summon it, you should also be able to play as it. And we'll get into the whole summoning thing later, because summoning is not entirely what you think it is. I mean, it's a thing. It's just different than what you probably think it is. And I suppose I should actually just kind of really quickly cover that, like right now. So, anyone who's played Magic the Gathering before knows that the bulk of your time, depending on the deck that you're running, but the bulk of your time is spent summoning monsters. You're either going to summon monsters that are going to attack for you or block for you. Sometimes you'll summon a monster for whatever special ability it is. Sometimes you'll summon a monster to carry an artifact for you. But either way, you summon monsters. Now, summoning monsters is nothing new. If you've ever played a tabletop game before, Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, whatever, summoning monsters, you actually just summon the monster from wherever, usually from a different plane, and that creature is here. Now, I have to specify this because let's say that you are a rather high-level wizard, okay? Sorry sorry about that. That you're a rather high-level wizard, and you cast Summon Monster 7. Okay. So at Summon Monster 7, you are allowed to summon not just like monsters, but you can summon things that have an actual intelligence score. I'm talking about lesser demons, devils, angels, things like that. These are creatures, and I'm going to air quotes that one, creatures, but because they have an intelligence score, these are not just a creature. They have their own identity, their own thoughts, their own feelings. They even have their own motivations. And if you were to, say, cast Summon Monster 7, and you summon down some kind of lesser angel, and then you order that angel to commit an evil act. You point to an orphanage and say, "Angel, slaughter the orphans." The angel actually has every right to ignore your order. Where if it's an animal, a beast, it's just going to go and do whatever you tell it to. Now, I explain this because that also means that if you summon this angel or a devil, and it dies, it is dead. Its body will return to whatever plane it came from, but that creature is dead. You summoned it here, you got it killed. This is not necessarily true in Magic the Gathering. In Magic the Gathering, whenever you summon a creature, you are not actually summoning that particular creature. You are summoning the echo of that creature. And that means that while the creature does technically act like it's alive, it will come with all the thoughts, feelings, personalities, and skills of the creature that you are echoing. It's not actually alive. And as soon as it dies, it leaves nothing behind. It is energy. And when it is dead, it returns to energy. So, summoning is going to be a little bit different. Now, this is going to get really interesting because, as we just pointed out, you can actually summon all of these classes. And when you're summoning all of these classes, generally speaking, they're going to be, because those are all classes, they're going to have some kind of race first. And so you come down here, we look at H, and there's halflings, there's humans. So, I mean, humans are incredibly common. And so you can have a human warrior or a human ranger or something like that. That character would come into play with pretty much all of the abilities that you would expect from it. But again, once it's gone, it's just gone. Because of that, though, I just kind of have to leave it as all classes are available. So, we're going to have to go and do this. I'm going to say all classes available. And we have to add a Planeswalker. So Planeswalker is going to technically be a class, not a race. Even though you have to be born a Planeswalker, it is essentially the same thing as being born a sorcerer. Every sorcerer that was born that way. You cannot learn to become a sorcerer. If you're learning it, you're a wizard. So that takes care of classes. Now, we have to add, and I'm not sure what order we're going to do these in, but we're going to need to add a travel system. And we need to add a travel system because we need to be able to simply jump between planes. Now, how the planeswalkers travel between planes is a little bit murky. So let's go to planeswalker lore here and see what we can find out. So right here it talks about planes walking. So here it says, it can take weeks or months to get the hang of planeswalking. It can take a lifetime to master it. The act of planeswalking is a spell, and like how every mage practices magic differently, every planeswalker planeswalks slightly differently. Some can planeswalk swiftly, some more slowly, some require great effort to planeswalk, some do it with ease, some can planeswalk again in a short amount of time, some can take a while, some can carry more inorganic material with them. A rare few can planeswalk organic material, and those usually have restrictions. For example, Yangu can only planeswalk with the questionably organic Mowu specifically, and Ren needs to be in a symbiotic relationship with a tree folk to take them with her. Kava is exceptional in that she can merge her body and mind with another being and take that individual with her on a planeswalk. So, I mean, we got that. PC Unicorn says, the cannon fodder is a travel system, technically. I cannot argue with that. Technically, it is. I don't know, necessarily think it's going to get you from one plane to another, but it will definitely get you from one place to another. And your cousin. Anyway, planeswalkers can planeswalk to specific locations though their accuracy is determined by their experience, mana, time, and familiarity with the destination. A planeswalker can also effectively teleport by planeswalking to the Blind Eternities and then back to another location on the same plane, which I suppose is a good time to bring up the Blind Eternities. So, in any other tabletop game, Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder, you have planes, okay? They already have a planar system. Again, you have the material plane where everything takes place, and then you have the aligned planes, you have the elemental planes, you have the energy planes. Now, when I say the aligned planes, I am specifically talking about those that align with your alignment. That is, lawful, chaotic, good or evil, and any combination thereof. Those are the aligned planes. And those are literally your heavens and hells, and the various stages in between them. Then you have your elemental planes, which are literally the pure embodiment of any particular element. The plane of water is literally an endless ocean with no air, or at least very little air. It can technically happen sometimes, but you enter the plane of water, you are underwater and good luck. You enter the plane of fire, and it is nothing but fire. There is technically land in the plane of fire, but all of it is basically brimstone. And then you travel to the plane of Earth. It is a solid chunk of Earth with caves inside of it. If you're lucky, you'll end up in a cave. If you're unlucky, you'll enter the plane of Earth directly inside of a rock, and that's the end of your character. And then the plane of air is literally just that. It is nothing but air, and you can fall forever, or until you hit a floating island. Of course, there are also the demi-planes, which are mixtures between those. There's a positive and negative energy planes, which both provide and take energy, and they basically provide the entire multiverse with time. So, you already have planes there. Then, you do technically have room between the planes. So high-level wizards can actually create what they call pocket planes, because you can always kind of wedge a little space in between planes and step between them. There are also some planes that kind of exist naturally between them, such as the ethereal plane. The ethereal plane is not associated with any other plane, it is outside of everything. It touches everything, it goes through everything, but it's never a part of everything. That's essentially what the blind eternities are. And what it's saying here is that just like you could use a spell like Dimension Door to temporarily step into the ethereal plane and then back out, you could teleport just naturally by stepping into the blind eternities and then stepping back out, which is good information because it basically means that every single planeswalker comes with teleport by default. Now, because it is a class, we do not have to give it right away. After all, as you level up, you will learn how to do new things, and that'll come to when we actually make the Planeswalker class. So, Planeswalkers will get teleport naturally, it's just probably not going to be level 1. Now, what level it's going to happen, we'll have to wait and see. PC Unicorn says Bloomborough Ral Zarek would be fine. He's an otter there in the plane of water. Okay, but there's a slight problem with that. Otters are still mammals and they still need to breathe. Again, the plane of water is just water. If you do not bring some kind of water breathing, you will die. This is one of the reasons why games are not usually set in other planes, and you don't usually go to other planes unless you have to. Now, that being said, I actually did develop a dungeon, and it's an elemental dungeon. In order to actually make it through, you have to traverse towers, and the inside of each tower is a pocket plane of a particular elemental plane, and the players have to navigate it. So imagine having to make your way up a 10-level tower where the inside is the plane of water. Good luck. Idea. The technical answer has got to be a no, because there's nothing in the blind eternities. There's nothing there except for magical energy. And the only reason there's magical energy there is because of the way the ley lines filter through every plane. And so as it's filtering from one plane to the next plane, there's going to be energy in between them. But every planeswalker has to come from a plane somewhere. It's just a matter of what plane are they going to come from. And more than likely, when we do get around to actually playing this one, it's going to come down to, do all the planeswalkers come from the same plane, or did everybody end up planeswalking here by some accident? We won't know until we actually get to there. Let's see. PC Corral says, Ral can summon lightning. Lightning will separate oxygen and hydrogen from water, therefore can breathe. Well, that may be true from a technical sense. However, if you're playing Pathfinder or Dungeons & Dragons and you use lightning in the water, you take the same damage. It's in the rules. And a lot of spells will just straight up fail underwater. Essentially, any spell that is fire-based fails immediately if it's underwater. Any spell with a verbal component generally fails if you're underwater. Some spells, depending on what you have to do, if they require somatic components, can fail while you're underwater. Basically, magic casting underwater is just really bad. I mean, I suggest you just don't do it. Okay, anyway, getting back to planeswalking. See, Teferi Akosa described his first planeswalk as a passenger of Urza's as like walking on clouds in a rainstorm through a rainbow. The colors were vibrant yet misty at the same time. While Jaheira noted that she only felt nausea. Karn likened it to floating in water, while he compared it to traveling through time, or while he compared traveling through time to walking against a windstorm. Chandra described her sense of other planes in planeswalking as akin to her peripheral senses. A planeswalker's arrival can be sensed by the sound of their displacement of air. So essentially, you literally just appear, kind of like how lightning just appears. And when lightning appears, the expansion of the air, which is, mostly from heat, but either way, the expansion of the air causes thunder. I mean, this is basic science. When a planeswalker appears, there's also going to be thunder. Any planeswalker can follow another planeswalker by following the aether trails in their immediate wake. A planeswalker can potentially describe a plane or method of locating it to another planeswalker, but this method can be unpredictable. And, that's fair because we already have teleport as a spell, and teleport can also be unpredictable. It is unknown if Planeswalker's soul can planeswalk after death. Kaya Kassir speculated that her spirit would remain on the plane on which she died. For a creature to become a planeswalker under normal circumstances, they must have a soul and be a mage of some kind. Artificial creatures like angels and demons, which are manifestations of mana, do not have the right soul or essence to hold a spark, though Calyx managed to turn into a planeswalker through some unknown process. Up until recently, the requirement of a soul prevented Phyrexia from completing planeswalkers. Jin Gitaxis has since found a way to complete them while preserving the soul enough to keep the spark. It is unknown at this time what ramifications of this are for the planeswalker. Okay, well, that's planeswalking then. So we're going to need that. However, it does say that you're going to need to have mana. And so if you got to have mana, we're going to need to have a mana system. So it's going to be a mana system, and it's going to have to be environmental. Now, I have spent already a great deal of time thinking about this. And the thing that I've come up with is... I'm going to go to Ranger here. Now, Rangers in Pathfinder, and technically Dungeons & Dragons, are interesting because they have what's called a favored terrain. And PC Unicorn says, in the plane of Equestria, Trixie objects to thunder explanation. She can object all she wants. The thunder will roll. Anyway, though. Yeah, here we go. At the 3rd level, a ranger gets what's called a favored terrain. Now, favored terrain, where is it? Favored enemy. Favored terrain. It's right in front of me, of course. At the 3rd level, they may suggest or select a terrain from the table. They get a +2 bonus on initiative checks and knowledge, geography, perception, stealth, and survival checks while in this terrain. Rangers are good to have. A ranger traveling through his favorite terrain normally leaves no trail and cannot be tracked, though they may leave a trail if they choose. At the 8th level and every 5 levels thereafter, they may choose an additional favored terrain. In addition, at each interval, the skill bonus and initiative bonus in any one favored terrain increases by +2. Now, none of this is terribly important unless you choose to play a ranger. What I do think is important is this table right here. These are your favored terrains. And we're just going to read through them. There are cold terrains, which are ice, glaciers, snow and tundra, desert, which is sanded wasteland, forests, which are carnivorous and deciduous. Now, it's important to note if you are unfamiliar with Magic the Gathering, there are lands, and I wonder where I can find this. I wonder if this is even in the wiki. Kind of simple. Magic the Gathering wiki lands. Yeah, here we go. So let's just move this to here. Alright, land. So let's see what it says. Lands represent locations under the player's control, most of which have mana abilities. Because mana is needed to use almost any card or ability, most decks need a high number of mana-producing lands, usually between 33 to 50% of the total deck. I usually run about 30%. That's why I get mana screwed all the time. So, flavor. The basic idea is that a mage must first create a bond to the land through some kind of ritual. Whether the mage needs to visit the land is an open question. Maybe some lands are so mana-rich or renowned that mages can create a connection to them from across space, time, even across planes. In any case, once a mage has established a bond to a given place, they can manifest that bond by concentrating on it and then channeling that mana from the land into themselves for spellcasting. Perhaps this bond is abstract and only in the mage's thoughts, but we've also thought about ways to represent the bond visually, such as with mana globes that float around the mage. The mage would then create a small mana globe, roughly baseball size, that is a magical manifestation of his or her connection to a given land. Then the mage could tap the mana globe to draw power into themselves. The mana globe would then slowly regenerate until it was ready to be siphoned again. The bond could also be represented at the site of the land, such as with a totem or magical spirit that marks the mage's bond to it. Recent development in this area has to do with legendary lands. It used to be that any unique place would be considered legendary for card purposes, whether it was a single structure or an entire city. We decided recently that unique places should be able to accommodate more than one mage's bond. Theoretically, that means you could start seeing more unique places on non-legendary land cards. This doesn't mean we won't print legendary lands anymore. Such lands will simply be conceived as places that can support a bond with only one mage. So, we've got that. And I don't think we really need to go into the rules. The rules are not going to matter. Not for our purposes, anyway. What I'm thinking, and it doesn't really list even all the lands here, but there's only 5 lands. There are mountains, forests, plains, swamps, and islands. There are lots of other lands, but they all fall into one of those 5 categories. Or technically there is a 6th category, which is none, and they have no kind of elemental affiliation at all. So what I'm looking at here is this. There are lands called forests, and so a forest and a forest are essentially the same thing. Any planeswalker who is inside of a forest terrain should be able to get green mana. By extension, a jungle is just an overgrown forest. Then we have mountains. Again, standard card for red mana. It is a terrain, it is something that we can represent, it's already built into the game. We have plains, white mana, already built into the game. The plains, this is really immaterial because we'll be playing through them. Swamps, again, already exist. These are black mana. Underground. Now, underground is difficult to understand because it could be red mana, because we are talking about essentially kind of just, stone. I'm not sure what we would do, though. And then urban. Now, remember what I said about there technically being kind of a 6th kind of land, which is neutral. Urban could be that neutral type. And then Magic the Gathering has islands, but you tap them for blue mana, which is associated with water, and so water would essentially fill that category. My my idea so far that I'm working on is that you would be able to draw mana from these places. Now, to make it fair, obviously, if you could only draw one type of mana from these, it means that only one type of Planeswalker would be able to interact with these places at all, and that's just basically impossible. What I do think will end up happening is that depending on the terrain that you're in, there will be an overwhelming amount of one type of mana and just a standard amount of everything else. After all, if you're looking at just a forest, well, a forest is going to have a river through it at some point because you can't have trees without water. And it's going to have somewhere for those trees to sit on. That's going to be stone, essentially. And so you do have the mountain, or at least like a tectonic plate somewhere under the ground, that you can draw red mana from. You're going to have the sun overhead, and that sun is going to grow grasses and such. That's going to be your white mana. And there is going to be dead and rotting animals and plants inside the forest somewhere. That will be your black mana. But if we were to say that the entirety of the forest was to be represented, we could say that perhaps the forest is able to provide upwards of 2 red and 2 black and 2 blue and 2 white on any given turn, and that the green mana, which is represented for forests, there could be 10 or 12. And this could always be randomized. We could have places where there is a lot more mana, and we could have places where there's very little mana. Just depending on where you are, it could affect how much is available to you. And so perhaps you enter an area where maybe it is a forest, but for some reason it is a magically dead forest. And so even though you are a planeswalker who is associated with green mana, perhaps you struggle here. I don't know. We'll have to find some way to kind of randomize things. And I do understand that, randomizing things can end up either, greatly or poorly, but that is part of the game. Sometimes being mana flooded or mana screwed happens, even to the best players. And so having this amount of randomness could very well be representative. So we're going to need to have that mana system, and it's going to need to be environmental. After that, though, we're going to need to have a conversion system. Card to block. Because we're going to need to be able to turn every single card in Magic the Gathering into a stat block of some kind. Now again, this is something that I have thought about a little bit already. I don't have a whole lot yet on it, but this is all creature type. Creature types glossary. Let's go back to the glossary here. Let's see. I think I just want like card type. This only goes up to F. Where's the rest of it? Oh, next page. This only goes to R. Next page. T. Type. There it is. The information lines, subtype, card type. Yeah, here we go. Oh, and types of mana. White, blue, black, red, green, and colorless. But we're going to go to card type. So, here's what we need to, or what we'll need to convert. So, typically have one or more of the permanent types. So, those are lands. Now, you're not going to have lands as part of your deck because you'll be able to simply draw mana from the environment that you happen to be standing in. And I think this is going to get very interesting because obviously every player is going to make their own character and every player is going to have their own preferences. I mean, if you like to play blue cards, you're going to be more affiliated with blue. You're going to want to be in a more blue, watery, islandy area. But as a team, you're going to be going places that are either going to be a boon for you or they're going to be just awful. Like, if you're in a team of people who are primarily red and they want to spend most of their time in the mountains, you're going to have a bad time. So, land we don't need to worry about. Creatures, however, we will. Creatures, artifacts, enchantments, other planeswalkers, which probably will not be a thing, but we'll have to work on that. And battle, and then there are either spells, which are instants or sorceries. Now, instants and sorceries are going to be interesting because instant and sorceries are going to be things that you yourself can just simply do. The example I was giving to somebody else is that we'll take a very simple spell like Shock. So if you are associated with red at all, or you just have the spell in your repertoire, you would have to be in an area that has at least one red mana in it, which is guaranteed to be pretty much anywhere. I mean, you'll be able to find one of any kind of mana basically anywhere you go. And so you can summon the power of one red mana and then you can fire it off. Now, in Magic the Gathering, in typical play, not Commander, because we're not going to be doing Commander play for this module. In typical play, you have a set 20 hit points. However, in Pathfinder, there is nothing like that. Now, given that the Planeswalker is going to be a class, it is going to have a certain hit dice. Now, what those hit dice are, I don't know yet. Probably going to be something similar to like a D8, maybe a D6, probably a D8 though. But that does mean that technically speaking, you could have a lot of hit points or little hit points. It'll just depend on luck. And, you know, some other things. You can do things that'll give you more hit points. However, these instants in Magic the Gathering, Shock just does 2 damage. Well, 2 damage when you are at level 1 is not bad. I mean, when we're looking at typical spells, if we come down here and look at just Sorcerer and spells, they draw from the spell list. So Shock is literally just that. It is a shock. Spark would be technically the closest to it, but this doesn't actually do any damage. So what we'd have to do is look at something like Ray of Frost. And Ray of Frost deals 1d3 damage. That's it. Just does 1d3 damage. That is an average of 2. Again, great at level 1. However, once you're into the higher levels, it's not nearly as effective. And so we're going to have to work on either how to scale it or perhaps how to boost it in some way. Because, again, the power of Shock in Magic the Gathering does not get any worse as the game goes on. It is true that if you're using a card like Shock to kill creatures, As the game goes on and the creatures get more powerful, the effectiveness of shock will drop off rather considerably. However, the effectiveness of shock against another player, against another planeswalker, never diminishes. 2 damage is 2 damage is 2 damage, whether you played at the beginning, the middle, or the end of the game. And as a matter of fact, towards the end of the game, it might be the way you win, where they only may have 2 hit points left, 2 life points, whatever. And so that shock is what you need to end the game. We will need to find some way to scale these. And I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do that yet. We don't need to know how we're going to do that yet, though. I mean, we're still working on this. So card types. Instants and sorceries. This is going to be really simple because essentially what we're talking about here are actions. Instants can be played on anybody's turn. Well, we already have a term for that in Pathfinder. We have full round actions, we have standard actions, we have swift actions, and we have immediate actions. An immediate action can be taken at any time. And as a matter of fact, I think I can pull that up. We need to come down to rules. Game mastering. Combat. Combat statistics, I want actions. Full round actions. Yeah, so we have full round actions, we have free actions, we have swift actions, immediate actions. And so if we look into these, an immediate action, much like a swift action, an immediate action consumes a very small amount of time, but represents a larger expenditure of effort and energy than a free action. However, unlike a swift action, an immediate action can be formed at any time, even if it's not your turn. For example, casting Featherfall is an immediate action since the spell can be cast at any time. Using an immediate action on your turn is the same as using a swift action, and it counts as your swift action for that turn. You cannot use another immediate or swift action until afterwards. And so we look at swift actions. A swift action consumes a very small amount of time, but it's more than a free action. If it says swift, it's essentially kind of like a free action. You can take it in addition to your standard action on that turn. And the only real limit on it is whatever you're doing has to be labeled as a swift action, and you only get 1 per turn. So you can't just say, well, I mean, I'm going to forego my standard action, I'm going to take a whole bunch of swift actions. No, you can't do that. You get 1. So there's that. And that's where I think that sorceries and instants are going to come in. Technically, I think enchantments are going to come into that category too, even though they're up here as permanents. They're as permanents, though, because they stay on the battlefield. For our purposes, though, an enchantment would kind of be more akin to a sorcery. If you understand what I'm saying. It's okay, though. Don't worry about it. Artifacts are going to be another thing. Now, artifacts in Magic the Gathering are spells. But I think that what we're going to do is that they're not going to be spells. Because an artifact is generally an actual artifact. It's an item. It's a sword or a shield or gauntlets or boots or something like that. There is no reason why we would treat in a tabletop D20 game an artifact any different than any other object you could pick up. So take, for example, one of my favorite artifacts, the Sword of Kaldra. It is a sword. Now, in the game, in Magic the Gathering, you would play it as a spell, and then you would equip it to a creature, and that creature is now holding it. But I see things as working differently. If you were to come across the legendary Sword of Kaldra in the D20 game, I think that you would just pick it up. Now, part of the reason for it being a spell is because, as we pointed out with the creatures, you're essentially summoning echoes of them. Now, this is not just limited to creatures. Technically, everything that you summon is an echo. And that also means that technically, if you've seen the Sword of Cauldra, you would be able to create an echo of it. Which is why, according to the rules, you can have multiples of them in the deck. However, I think it would be far more interesting if whatever artifact you picked up was just the artifact. This would limit the number of legendary artifacts in the game, because you would have to actually possess that item. And I'm all for kind of power scaling things down. I like to keep things more grounded. It also means, however, that any of these artifacts that you pick up, you would have access to them all the time without the need of mana. And you could make use of them in all kinds of different ways. An example that I can think of, the Nurok Hover Sail. If you actually were able to bring a Nurok Hover Sail with you, it would essentially, because Nurok Hover Sail gives flying, it would let you fly at will all the time. Now, how that's going to work, I don't necessarily know. We'll get into that further on into the game. But every single one of these is going to need to have some kind of stat block. Creatures are going to need to have a statistics block. Artifacts will need to have at least some kind of description of what they do. Same with enchantments. Planeswalkers, I still don't think we're going to have those in. Instant and sorceries are going to be spells, which means that they will come with, well, I mean, everything that we saw here. They will come with a casting time. The components are going to be simple. You're just going to need mana. They'll need a range, they'll need the effect, they'll need the duration, and saving throws if there are any. So, instants and sorceries will get a block like this. The real complicated part for the conversion is going to be that with creatures, they're going to need to have all of their stats listed, and that means that we're going to need to convert the card information. And that's going to get complicated pretty fast. Because in order to convert it from a card to an actual stat block, needed a drink. We're going to have to fill in a lot of information. And I wonder if I can present that here. Card type. Creature. Can I just get like a demonstration of a creature here? Warriors, minions, beasts, monsters. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, a history of power creep. That's funny, actually. That's really funny. I want to take a look. Creatures are better than they were 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. In Alpha, there was a fundamental imbalance in power between creatures and spells. Since Alpha, there's been an ongoing effort to make creatures stronger in comparisons to non-permanents. Yeah, power creep. Tell me about it. Okay, small, medium, and large. Now, this is interesting. This is very interesting. So, the Mystery Booster Test Card Skill Destruction defines a small creature as having total power and toughness of 4 or less. Medium creatures 5 to 8, and then large being 9 or more. Mark Rosewater has provided slightly different scales on several occasions. There is no extra large category. These creatures have no mechanical relevance and are only used during designed to generalize unfilled creature slots. Doesn't matter though, we can use that. That means, because every character, every creature in Pathfinder has a size. That means that, for example, a 1/1 goblin, well, total power and toughness, that means a 1/1 would be total power toughness of 2, would be small. Well, that makes sense, because goblins are small. We come down to the bestiary. Sorted alphabetically. G. Gargoyles, golems, genies, gnolls, ghouls. Goblin. Here we go. Alright, it's just your typical goblin. CR of 1/3. So, you know, you can fight a whole bunch of them at once. It's fun. Right there, a neutral evil, small humanoid. This is perfect. So that is going to make things very interesting. It also means that technically speaking, when you add onto these creatures, when you play something like Giant Growth, the spell Giant Growth, if I remember correctly, gives the targeted creature +2/+2 until end of turn. Casting that on the goblin would give or make him a 3/3. His total power toughness would be 6, and thus the Giant Growth card would actually make it grow, turning it from a small creature into a medium creature. This is fascinating. This is wonderful. I love this. This is great. It also does mean, however, that perhaps some creatures might be a little bit on the small side. Simply because there is no extra large category. Did my mouse just stop working? My mouse just stopped working. That's okay. I can fix this. Because there is no extra large category, it means that, like, if somebody summons a dragon, it's going to be kind of a small dragon. Oh, this is not what I want. Oh, I hate this mouse sometimes. There we go. Oh, now you work. Now that I pull up the troubleshooter, now you decide to work. I see how it is. Alright, so yeah, summoning a huge, just enormous dragon, something that's like a 10/10 creature, is still only going to be in the large category. And that means that... where would it be? Be under Game Mastering, I believe? Under Combat. Yeah, here we go. Space, Reach, and Threatened Area templates. So, area effects in larger creatures. Here we go. Creature sizes. So, small takes up a 5-foot space and has a 5-foot reach. Okay, that's it. Medium, same thing. But when we get into large, we would have to determine whether it's large tall or large long. Either way, though, they take up a 10-foot space. And depending on whether they're tall or long, it changes their reach. But either way, we're talking something that is roughly 8 to 16 feet, either tall or long, and weighing up to 2 tons. Again, for a dragon, that's a little on the small side. Although not... I mean, it's not the worst. Technically speaking... dragon... demons... dragons. Here we go. Let's just pick your traditional chromatic red dragon. And if we look here... sorry. I want the variants. How about the young? Let's go with the young one. Okay, a young red dragon is large. A juvenile is also large. Young adult? Okay, the young adult jumps up to huge, and so it's now bigger. That means that essentially if you summon a dragon, you're summoning up to a juvenile one. Which, you know... It's not the worst thing in the world, because I do kind of like the idea that there are always going to be bigger things out there. And PC Unicorn says, Colossification. Target creature gets +20/+20. The flavor text reads, turns out the case of the flattened outpost and the case of the missing kitten were related. That's adorable. I love it. I'm going to have... my wish list of cards is going to be so long after this series. Now, alternately, we can expand upon this. It says here that there is no extra large category according to him. We could adjust this. I mean, after all, he's already got it scaled for us. Small is a total power toughness equal to 4 or less. Okay. Medium is 5 to 8. That is a 4-point increment. Which means we could go 9 to 12, 13 to 16, and so on. And so we could actually get up to that colossification. Colossal, I do believe, is the largest. Yeah, Colossal is the largest, so if we were to say that small is 1 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 16, 17 to 20, and that means that if Gargantuan is 17 to 20, that technically Colossal would be anything 20 plus, which actually fits perfectly in line with Colossalification, which would guarantee that even if it was cast on a 1/1 creature, it would be guaranteed colossal size. We can do that. We can absolutely do that. So, we'll have to keep that one in mind. Let's go ahead and make a note here. So, creature size is equal... come on. Equal to power toughness. That should be everything we need. So yeah, we're going to need that. And is that pretty much everything that we're going to need? We're going to build our planeswalkers. We're going to build the travel system, which is basically just going to be teleporting between planes. We're going to have the mana system. We're going to have the conversion system, which should allow us to convert everything. Actually, there is one more thing that we're going to need. It's going to be part of the conversion system. Because... what's the word that I want here for the abilities? Is it literally just abilities? It could be just abilities. Where's my mouse? There it is. So, type... I think it's going to be ability. An ability is a texting characteristic of an object that is unitalicized, being neither flavor text nor a reminder text. They fall into one of 4 categories. They're either spell abilities, activated abilities, triggered abilities, and static abilities. Some activated or triggered abilities are also mana abilities, and some static abilities are also evasion abilities or characteristic defining abilities. Wow, there's a lot more of these than I thought there was. Some may be indicated by the presence of a keyword. Certain card types grant intrinsic abilities. Conspiracy sets feature draft abilities. Right. I think keywords is what I'm going to want here. Keyword ability. Wait. Oh, no, here we go. Keyword abilities. Yes, we're going to need to write rules for pretty much all of these. So Death Touch, Defender, Double Strike, Enchant, Equip, First Strike, Flash, Flying. Yeah, pretty much all of these. Now, most of this should be really simple, because all we'll have to do for a lot of these is simply just put the direct text in there. Like, for example, Haste is one that I'm familiar with. Haste means that a creature can act as soon as it is summoned. Normally when a creature comes in, it has something called Summoning Sickness, and you can't use it until your next turn. Haste circumvents that. Now, how this is going to work in the tabletop game, I'm not sure yet. But for example, I believe that Haste, when you summon a creature with Haste, it may have to actually wait until your next turn. However, if you cast a creature with Haste, it would essentially share your initiative roll. And so you could use it as soon as it came into play. Hexproof, though, just means that it can't be touched. Indestructible is exactly what it sounds like. And yeah, it just goes from there. So we'll need to put in the rules for all of these. And while there does seem to be a lot, and there are a lot of them, I do believe that it will go very quickly. And for some of them, like for example, More Than Meets the Eye, I know that one because that comes directly from the Transformers set that I still have yet to get my paws on. Someday. Anyway though, we're not going to need this. Again, I'm not going to have people summoning Megatron into what will otherwise be a fantasy game. It's just not going to happen. So, some of these we will be able to simply ignore. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume there's probably going to be a lot of them we'll be able to ignore. Not the majority of them, not even close to the majority of them, but a lot of them regardless. So, with that in mind, I think we're pretty much good to go. I don't know if there's anything else that we need to really focus on here. So we don't have a lot of time left today, but we can probably get some work done on this. I'm going to rename this sheet as the overview. And maybe we can move on to the actual Planeswalker. I wonder if I can simply... I can! Excellent. Wait, no, did that work? I don't think that actually worked. Oh no! Stop not responding. Start responding, please. I didn't hurt you that much, did I? That's not good. Anyway, well, while I wait for my spreadsheet to figure out whether it wants to participate in today's stream or not, let's go ahead and take a look at classes. And since I got the Ranger up here already, we'll do that. So we're gonna have to make this oh, come on. Please do not make me have to restart you. Well, we're gonna have to make the Planeswalker from scratch, which means that we're gonna have to fill in literally all of these things. I don't know what we're gonna do for role. The role is a Planeswalker. And I think I broke my spreadsheet. Wonderful. Okay, hold on a second. Because I'm going to have to restart it. Yes, I know OpenOffice is not responding. I can tell that it's not responding. Clearly, a format painter was just too much for it. Alright. Let's see what we lost. If anything. No, I don't think we lost anything. I just got to rename these sheets now. Alright. This is going to be the overview. And this tab is going to be the Planeswalker. Okay. Let's try this a little bit differently. So, let's increase the font size. We're going to bold things just to make it easier to read. Oh, I want to do that. I want to format the cells and turn them into text. Okay, so Planes class Planeswalker. And we'll go back and we'll take a look, and we're just going to copy this line by line. So I guess we'll start with the role, even though this should be pretty obvious. The role is simple. Is going to be simple. How do we want to describe it? Actually, you know what? I don't even have to describe it. Planeswalker. Description. The defining trait amongst planeswalkers is be able to travel between separate universes with ease, while the vast majority of the people throughout the multiverse are not even aware of other worlds that exist beside their own. Planeswalking is a form of magic. With enough time or mana, even specialized knowledge, or with access to enormous power, it's possible for a planeswalker to transfer clothing, artifact. Don't care about that part. So, all we really need is this line right here. And we're just going to copy that there. We're going to default format that, and then use the format painter to put that in. And then, I guess, I'll go ahead and merge those, and wrap text? Okay, that's still a bit much. Let's merge those. That's not bad. We can live with that. That'll work. Okay. Also, I don't normally have to do this, but alignment. Let's make sure that all text is aligned to the middle. Next is the alignment. So, alignment. Any. Because there are good planeswalkers, there are bad planeswalkers, there are many different kinds of planeswalkers. And they can do whatever they want. They can be good guys, they can be bad guys. They don't even have to be guys. Alright, hit die. Now, planeswalkers are explicitly referred to as mages. And I do mean explicitly referred to as mages. So we should treat them as such. A wizard has a D6 for a hit die. A sorcerer has a D6 as a hit die. Ergo, I think I'm leaning towards a D6. A druid has a D8 for a hit die. That does skew things a little bit, but I'm still leaning towards a D6. So I think that's what we're going to do. You're going to get a D6 for a hit die. So maybe put some effort into your constitution. Starting wealth. That one's a bit tougher. However, I do think that what we're going to do is we're going to make their wealth a little bit on the lower side. And the reason for that is this. According to what it was saying about planeswalking, it says, actually, it says right here, with enough time or mana, or specialized knowledge, or with access to enormous power, it is possible for a planeswalker to transfer clothing, artifacts, and or creatures with them as they planewalk. This means that in general, planeswalkers are not capable of taking things with them. As a matter of fact, a planeswalker may not even be able to bring their clothes with them, and may have to planeswalk naked. Because of this, I have to imagine that part of being a planeswalker is learning how to travel light. Which means that a planeswalker is going to not have a great amount of wealth. So, carrying capacity, basics, common terms, where is wealth? Magic items, no. Game mastering, maybe? Adventures, original adventures, no. Environment, exploration, and movement. I wonder if it'd be under equipment. Maybe. Let's see. Special materials. Yeah, it might be in here. Yeah, here we go. Wealth. Wealth and money. So, looking at wealth and money. Druids tend to start with an average of about 70. Arcanists start with about 70 gold pieces. Kineticists start with only 35 on average. Same thing with a monk. And a monk might actually be a really good way to go, because they're going to have to live like monks. Now, that could change. That could change. One of the things that I'm kind of thinking about, and I got to think about some of these things ahead of time, is it says right here, with enough time and mana, or with specialized spell knowledge, or with access to enormous power, it is possible for a planeswalker to transfer clothing, artifacts, and creatures with them. With enough time and mana. Now, time and mana are kind of combined. Anyone who's ever played Magic the Gathering knows that the longer the game goes on, the more mana you'll have access to. On your first turn, you're going to play a mana. On your second turn, you're going to play a land. On your second turn, you play a land. On your third turn, you play a land. And you're going to keep doing that whenever you have the opportunity. You're allowed to play one land per turn, and if you have it, you're laying it down, generally speaking. What we may need is to simply say that planeswalking may be a free action. Now, I don't necessarily know how we're going to do that, but planeswalking may be a free action because planeswalkers can do it inadvertently. At least a quarter of the planeswalkers, I do believe, find out that they are planeswalkers because they just did it. They were in danger, or something threatened them, or they were afraid, and they just did it. So what we may end up doing is that it would take, let's say, one mana worth of power to bring an item with you. This means that at level 1, you would be able to start with just your outfit, essentially. And perhaps some money. So we could say that perhaps I think we can say that gold and money in general will be accepted from the rules for traveling. You can carry your money with you, and if it takes 1 mana to transfer an item with you, then at level 1 as a planeswalker, so long as you can conjure 1 mana, and you can absolutely conjure 1 mana, then you can planeswalk with your clothing. I think that's the way to go. So let's bring this up again. I'm just going to go with the monk because that's what we were looking for. Starting wealth is 1d6 times 10 gold pieces, and an outfit worth 10 gold pieces or less. And I'm literally just going to copy and paste this. Format Painter. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and center that. So there we go. You'll be able to start with a little bit of money. You'll start with an outfit. Anything else that you buy afterwards is going to be on you. Class skills. Okay. Class skills. So this is where I think we need to look at, say, the sorcerer. Because a planeswalker is essentially a sorcerer of a different kind. Because of that, I do believe that their class skills are going to be essentially the same. And I think that we can actually just go through and copy these. Because they do make sense. Appraise? Sure, I guess. I don't necessarily know that you would be good at appraising. However, then again, if your character is used to doing without, then perhaps appraising is actually something they'd be very good at. Bluffing would be very useful. Crafting, of course, everyone gets craft. Flying. Yeah, probably. Intimidating. I don't know if planeswalkers are typically intimidating. However, I can only imagine that in places where magic is, you know, rather low level, if you are a planeswalker, you are a god. So, intimidating? Yeah. Knowledge Arcana. You're a planeswalker. You know how this stuff works. Hopefully. Profession. There's a very good chance that before you were a planeswalker, you had a day job of some kind. Spellcraft is obvious. Use magic device is obvious. I think that all of this is very good. And so I think we're just going to go ahead and do this. So we'll put that there. And we'll do that. Yeah, I think this works. Actually, default format that, and then we'll do that. All right. So there's class skills, just copied straight from the sorcerer. I don't think we need anything else. But hey, if anyone has any ideas that they should go in there, let me know. Skill ranks per level. I am inclined to go ahead and leave that as is. I think that's actually probably fine. They have a lower number of skill ranks per level, but they also have fewer skills. So we'll default format those. And then we'll just reformat those. Perfect. That's going to bring us down to the actual table then. And this is where things are going to get kind of interesting. So, a lot of this we can copy straight down, I believe. I wonder what's going to happen if I copy this table indirectly. Copy and paste. That actually came out better than I thought it would. Let's go ahead and default format that. And then we're going to format painter this. I'm going to go ahead and insert a row to put a little bit of a break in there. And then let's adjust our columns so that we can read this. Wow. No. Undo that. So let's try that again. That's much better. That's much better. So we're going to go ahead and this one is going to have to get deleted because we don't have bloodline powers, obviously. And the spells per day is also going to be kind of null and void because we're going to do things differently. So we don't actually need this part at all. Okay, and that's going to give us our attacks, it's going to give us our saves, and then specials. So, these specials, of course, are going to be Spark. Well, no, that's a little bit esoteric there. So what are they going to get? The first thing they're going to get, of course, is going to be mana. They need to have mana. The second thing they're going to need is going to be something to do with that mana. They're going to need to have a repertoire of spells. And I guess we can just literally put it that way. Spells. Okay, so we got that. One other thing. According to the Planeswalker lore here, a Planeswalker who specifically a being who possesses a Planeswalker's spark and imprint of Aether on a being's soul. In a way, Planeswalkers functions as avatars of the Blind Eternities. One in several million sentient beings is born with a spark, and having it ignite is exceedingly rare. Many of them die shortly after completing their first Planeswalk, left in a catatonic state, lost to the Blind Eternities, or simply dying due to the stress. However, I believe it said somewhere let's see, they can take people with them. Yes, yes, yes. Ah, here we go. No, that's not it. This is their descriptions of what it's like. I thought it said somewhere that they can recognize when somebody else planeswalks to their plane. Oh, no, it says right here, they can only be sensed by the sound of their displacement in the air. Okay, so it's not like when a paladin has the natural ability to detect good or evil. It's just they they know, or they can hear it. So we don't need that. I don't necessarily know if a planeswalker can simply recognize another planeswalker just by being around them. It does say here that in the history, planeswalkers had incredible magical abilities, surpassing all but the most powerful mortal wizards. Their lives could last indefinitely, and their physical forms were matters of will, as they were energy projections of a center of consciousness. Through intense efforts, they could create their own artificial planes, because planeswalkers prolong lifespans and immense power. Some were worshipped as gods. Is that still true? Current planeswalkers. The new breed of planeswalkers no longer display the near omnipotence of their predecessors, while planeswalker leads to broader experiences and greater chance to learn. Most planeswalkers are not any more powerful. They are still physical beings that, in general, age normally. They can be harmed and need the same sustenance as mortals. They stop being able to transport other people during a planeswalk, and they can bring their clothes and some small items, for example, but not food. In this stark contrast to the earlier planeswalkers, some have managed to suppress or even avoid these limitations by magical means. However, these are specific to each planeswalker. Okay, so it says here that they can at least bring their clothes with them. However, bringing other items with you might be a thing. Perhaps we need to put like a weight limit, so you can't, or you'll need extra mana for anything that weighs over, say, a pound. That would more or less take care of the money issue, where you'd never need to worry about money. Or at least, losing your money. You wouldn't need to worry about your clothes that much because they come with you. However, if you want to wear armor or carry weapons, that might be a problem. Let's see, the new breed that was born during the Mending, when Jessica sacrificed her life and her spark to mend all temporal rifts in the multiverse. Doing so on such a scale probably this mending caused a change in the very rules of the multiverse and the nature of Planeswalker sparks. In March of the Machine, the aftermath that's revealed the consequences of the new Phyrexian invasion caused many Planeswalkers to lose their sparks, as the multiverse was forced to open paths between planes. At least 16 named Planeswalkers with printed Planeswalker cards became legendary creatures, with their first appearance having a cracked Planeswalker symbol or desparked watermark. I don't really care about the reason for it that much. And I don't think we're going to really play with that, because your characters need to have a spark to be a Planeswalker. So I don't think this is going to really affect anyone. Okay then, so just mana and spells then for now. Now, how we're going to do this, is going to get really interesting, because this almost is going to require us to go into the mana system first before we can really put down the details to this, the actual mana and the spells. So this is a good start, I think. This is a good start, but I think we may have to get into the actual systems first before we can finish the actual class. Which, kind of makes sense. PC Unicorn says, I would think that they could bring stuff, because Teferi in particular always has his staff. And that's a good point. However, if I remember right, because the name sounds familiar, Teferi is a very powerful either wizard or planeswalker. Probably a planeswalker, because I don't think normal wizards can planeswalk. But it literally says up here, sorry. With enough time and mana, or specialized spell knowledge, or with access to enormous power, it's possible for a planeswalker to transfer clothing, artifacts, which would include the staff, and or creatures. If Teferi is really that legendary planeswalker, they fill all those categories. Time, mana, specialized knowledge, access to enormous power, yeah. So it would probably be nothing for an experienced planeswalker like that to bring their staff with them. But for a lower level one, who maybe doesn't have access to all of that, and perhaps that's something we can include. So that specialized knowledge, right there, that could be something that could fill in this special area. So starting off, you can carry nothing with you, but we could go to, say, like level 4, and say at the 4th level you can bring up to a certain amount of weight with you when you travel. And if we said, you can bring X amount of weight with you when you travel, if we made it like 20 pounds at level 4, then at level 8 it could be 40, 60, 80, and at level 20, you could bring with you up to 100 pounds of something else. Which, I mean, at 100 pounds, that's a small person. So I don't know exactly how we're going to do that, but we'll work on it. We are just about out of time, so I think that the next time we come back here, we need to work on these two things. Mostly, we just need to work on how the mana system is going to work, which is going to include how much mana you can hold. And we'll work on how many spells you can have, because as I stated, the goal is going to be for you to have your own deck, essentially. Your own repertoire of spells. How you get those spells, we're going to have to go into detail on. And we're going to have to figure out how that's going to work. A lot of this is just going to be raw development. We have some information from the wiki, but as you can see, I mean, this is the entirety of the lore for the Planeswalkers. It's not much. It's better than nothing, but it's not much. And if we even go to just the Planeswalker page, stop scrolling on me when I scroll on you first. Of course, you as the player are a Planeswalker. It's got information on the card types. But this is specifically just for the card game. We can't really do a lot with this. There's the Planeswalker symbol, of course. Here are the rules for the Planeswalkers, but again, there's not really anything we can do here with it. Planeswalker redirection rules. Again, I don't see you being able to summon a Planeswalker in Pathfinder. And hey, we have somebody else in the chat. Hello, Dragavon. It's good to see you. Hold on, I get to do this again. I get to wave. I love doing that. I need more people to show up so I can do that more often. Unfortunately, you came at right at the end, because I'm just about to finish up. So yeah, there's not a lot of information on exactly where the spells come from. I know it says in here somewhere that a Planeswalker can summon more or less anything that they've seen before. So long as they have, or they're able to visualize it in their head and kind of recreate it, then they're able to summon it. So we're going to have some kind of experience system for for how they're going to do this. What it's essentially going to come down to, I believe, is that you're going to have to keep notes. Like, as you're playing, everyone is going to be able to start off with a certain number of spells that you can play, and you'll have to keep a log of every time you come across a creature. You'll have to write it down, because when you level up, you will be able to pick more creatures to add to your collection. But you'll need to keep track of your own memory and your own experience. So we'll have to deal with that. That's going to come into the category of spells. So yeah, when we come back next time, I think we'll work on the mana system, which is going to be the environmental stuff as well. So we'll have to determine how the environments are going to be sorted, how much mana is going to be in each environment, which is probably going to be a variable scale. I think that's going to be next. Okay, though. Yeah, like I was saying, we're just about to get out of here. So, we've got a plan for next time. And already, I'm really, super excited for this module. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be a ton of fun. I think that once we get this, it's going to be interesting to see, an entire party of maybe planeswalkers who are capable of casting spells and summoning creatures. I'm thinking that it could be very interesting role play, being able to walk into a city and being able to simply cast whatever spells you want. It's going to make certain builds in Magic the Gathering decks, I think, actually more viable. So, for example, if you play blue, the most hated and feared blue deck is, of course, the counterspell deck. But even a counterspell deck is at least limited by the fact that you're only allowed to have 4 of any card in your deck. However, on the tabletop, I don't think that's really going to be I don't think it's really going to be a limit. You can maybe have only 4 of something out at any given time. And again, maybe that's something that we have to work on. Maybe you can, we'll have to introduce some kind of instance. So, for example, level 1 to 5, you can only have 1 instance of a creature out, or a card, or an effect out. Once you hit level 6 to 10, perhaps that goes up to more. And then, of course, 11 to 15 would be 3 instances, and then 16 to 20 would be 4 instances. And so we can integrate the rules in that fashion. Okay, and yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to think of, and I'm keeping track of a lot of it in my head. It's a lot. I see that Jeffrey's in the chat. Hello, Jeffrey. You get a wave too. See, waving. I love doing that so much. I don't know if you're just getting in or if you're just getting out, either way. But we are on our way out here. So, if you want to see more of the Magic the Gathering system, in particular because we're going to be working on the mana part of it next, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, that way you get notified every time these videos come out. If you know somebody else who is also into Magic the Gathering or Pathfinder, either one of them, if they've got any interest at all, I would suggest sharing it. Because if they are interested, they're going to want to get in this one early. It's going to be fun. Yeah, Jeffrey, I'm sorry you missed it. We do start at the same time every week, though. It's always 10 a.m. Eastern, currently Standard Time. We're not in Daylight Savings Time anymore. So yeah, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, U.S. So if you're looking forward to it next week, that's when it's going to be. And besides that, I mean, you can always go back and watch it if you missed it. I recommend it. So, share the video out if you know somebody else who might be into it. Otherwise, though, I guess if you're just going to enjoy this, if you're liking what I'm doing so far, leave a like on the video. leave a comment down below. If you want to suggest anything, like if you want to suggest a different module to work on in the future, or if you have suggestions for this module while we're working on it, put it in the comments. Either put it in the comments, or what would be even better is click on the link for the Discord and join the Discord, because there you can share anything you want, and you can contact me directly with it if you want to. But you can send stuff to me there. Also, if you want to play this with us, you have to join the Discord. Okay, we already have one gaming group going on. I will add more groups if I need to, if I have enough interest from people. So, if you want to play with us, you have to join the Discord, go to the behind the screen channel, and let me know what your availability is. So I hope to see you there. Otherwise, I hope to see you next week when we get back here for this. I'm thankful for everyone that showed up. I'm thankful for the interest. I'm excited to do more of this. And until the next time, take care.